Welcome to our today's webinar about audit trails and auditor reviews in clinical trials. My name is Martina Pavleta. I'm a data scientist in the life sciences team at KNIME, a big KNIME fan since many, many years. And today, please welcome with me our guest speaker and domain expert in the area of clinical trials and audit trails as well, and also a very, very big KNIME fan. Welcome, Ronald Savarin.
Yeah, thank you, Martina, and welcome everybody. My name is Ronald Severin. I'm working at Merck Healthcare as senior clinical data science in some years, and I'm around 20 years now in the pharmaceutical area. And we have a nice topic today about audit trail review and clinical trials, which is not only a topic for pharmaceutical, but also finance and automobile and other domain areas can this be used. So the agenda for today, I will share some backgrounds and definition what an audit trail is and an audit trail review. So short to say an audit trail is who did, when, what, and why. Yeah, and also I will talk about audit trail review scope, use cases. There are many use cases. I will share some of them. Tools for audit trail review and why we use the tool KNIME.
Okay.
And
very curious.
Yeah.
Very curious to hear more today. Very excited. Thank you very much. Okay, before we start with the presentation from Ronald, let's have some housekeeping slide first, so you know how to use the tool of today's webinar. So this is what you see on screen when joining the webinar. There is a chat section right over here, as you can see on the slide, where you can interact with others about the event and also post where you are joining us from, for example, for a good warm up of today's webinar, for example. And next to this chat section, there is also a Q&A section. Here you can ask questions to the KNIME team and the speakers, and we will have a Q&A section at the end. And we will try to answer all the questions that come up during the webinar. So please add questions there. If you have some streaming problems and maybe got lost at some point, just to make sure you use Chrome or Firefox as the preferred web browser for the best experience within the webinar. Try to refresh your browser if something is frozen. Make sure your internet connection is stable. Maybe also check your cookies if needed, or try the private mode if something is really not working. If you get lost, always look for this stage button with this little camera, and this brings you back to our presentation. Okay, in terms of today's agenda, we will start with an introduction to the KNIME platform. So I will provide a bit more background of what KNIME is and what the KNIME platform is. Then I will hand over to Ronald that will introduce audit trails and audit trail reviews for clinical trials. He will also show a workflow that he has created for this purpose, and I will then take this workflow in the next step and show you how we could automate the workflow and put this into production on the KNIME Business Hub. And we will finish the session with a Q&A where we get some additional help from my colleague Alice. She is also monitoring the chat, the Q&A section and the chat section. So if you put some questions there, we will try to answer those directly in the chat or at the end of today's session. So please stay until the end if you have some questions. Okay, let's get started with the introduction to the KNIME platform. So what is the KNIME platform? It's an open source tool for data analytics and data analysis, and it's really made for people with different backgrounds. Like due to the low code and no code principle of how the tool has been designed, it's really for people with different backgrounds. Within KNIME, we work with nodes, as you can see here on the slides. Those nodes have different colors, different functionality, depending on what they are used for. So we start connecting those nodes together and then create with this a whole workflow. So with the KNIME platform, everything is about nodes and workflows. You can start a workflow with usually with loading some data. This can be different type of data sources that you can get data from, and then you can do some data blending, joining, transformation, further analysis, maybe visualization if you want to create some plots. And at the end, you might want to save the data and save your results, and or maybe put it back to a database, or maybe send this to a business intelligence tool that you are using within your company. Within KNIME, or like the KNIME Analytics platform, is capable of connecting to different other technologies. So there's a really big ecosystem that KNIME is capable to be integrated with. So like when we start on the left side on the slide, you see there are different data sources that KNIME can get data from. This can be different databases, can be Oracle database, can be the MongoDB database, but also all databases that are working with JDBC drivers can be connected within KNIME. But also tools like SharePoint, or maybe files that were written using SAS, those also can be read in within KNIME. If you use different tools like Rave, or also in clinical area, tools like coming from Viva, for example, those tools have a certain provide an API, and then you can also use KNIME to KNIME nodes to get data from those tools using the REST API, for example. If you store your data on different cloud system, doesn't matter if this is Azure or AWS or the systems like Databricks or Snowflake, KNIME is also capable of connecting to this. If you are a programmer and if you have some scripts already, like in Python or R, and you would like to reuse those in order not to reinvent the whole workflow that you maybe already written up or wrote up in Python, you can also reuse those scripts within KNIME, as there is a very nice integration for R, Python, and Java as well. Once you extracted the data, did some analysis, you might want to save the data. And there are different options available. So you can create PDF reports, but also save data into Excel or PowerPoint. So you have ready presentations with freshly generated results. But also if you have a preferred business intelligence tool within your company, like Tableau, Power BI, or Spotfire. So it's also possible to send the data automatically to those tools. Okay, you might wonder where KNIME is also being used within, or like across industry. Ronald mentioned this already before. Like for audit trails, you can not use it only in clinical trials, but also in finance, you have to do audit trails, and also in different other areas as well. And KNIME in general is being used really across different industries and also across different departments in those industries. This can be finance, this can be marketing, retail, manufacturing. And today we focus a little bit more on life sciences and healthcare. So within life sciences and healthcare, we have we saw many use cases around chemistry and the pharmaceutical industry and the biotech industry, but also in healthcare, analyzing patient data is becoming more and more popular. And with this, let me hand over to Ronald, that will tell us today a bit more about audit trail reviews and why KNIME is a useful tool for this. Over to you, Ronald.
Thank you, Martina. So let's start with some background about the regulatory requirement and guidelines that are in place for audit trail and audit trail review. So the first requirement is, and if you work on this area, you surely know the ICH GCP, Good Clinical Practice, where there's a section about audit trail, and in the newer version also about risk management is important. Then in Germany, we have, of course, laws about clinical trials, and also important is the US FDA 21 CFR Part 11, which is not only about electronic records and electronic signatures, but also about audit trails and systems. electronic systems that are using that. Really nice source about audit trail review is the UK MHRA GXP Data Integrity Guidance and Definitions. And there you find some guidance here. And most importantly for us, and if you are interested in audit trail review, especially in the clinical trials area, is the e-paper from the eClinical Forum and the Society for Clinical Data Management, the SCDM. So here in this e-paper, you find a lot of information and use cases. So as said, audit trail review, you find some guidance in the MHRA, GXP Data Integrity Guidance and Definitions. And there it's stated that companies should develop meaningful audit trail review processes using risk-based approach, right? And at least focus on critical data and data sets. So at the end, one should be able to reconstruct data events. So transparency is very important, and to oversee processes. So oversight and data governance is very important. What is the audit trail review scope? So of course, you have system data. That means all data types and systems. And then, looking at data criticality and reliability. Audit trail review techniques and frequencies should be based on data criticality and associated risk. So there are 5 main use cases listed, especially in this e-paper. So the first one is system access. This includes integrations. So that means you not only have one source, but possibly more than one source. The second one is about data changes. The third one is about data collection. Fourth one is reporting, and the last one is about devices. So I listed here some possible use cases, potential objective for audit trail reviewers. So one might be investigation of data integrity issues, which you can look at. One big important topic is identification of suspicious or fraudulent data. So data fraud is a big topic here in the industry. For example, we had a case where we had a questionnaires with scores in one trial, and the scores look too good to be true. So we investigated that, and it seems that the scores were somehow optimized to look better. So this is something you can detect with looking at audit trail. Then identification of alternative sources data implemented by sites. Then, of course, unauthorized accesses and data events. So you can look who should have access to the data intrusion, and so on. Then you also oversight on changes to critical data. So you can possibly focus on critical data, on the main data. One really good use case is also process improvements based on trends. So you can look at the data and see trends. And the last one I listed in is performance of users. So for example, you can look, how long it took for a user after creation of the account to log in, how often does the user log in, etc. Tools for audit trail review. Why we use KNIME? So it's an easy-to-use tool with an intuitive graphical user interface for creating workflow and reusable components. So you have the nodes and can create from several nodes or components, which is very fine. And it's a widely used tool with a great community. It's flexible and supports common programming languages. For us, it's important, like Python, R, especially in our area, Java, SQL, and many more, as well as code-free programming, right? This is something very important. Maybe if there's someone who does not have that programming language background, just can use code-free programming. And also very important, it supports many interfaces, has a great interoperability and operating systems. So Windows, Mac, and Linux is supported. I'm an open source fan, so this is great that everyone can use it and try it yourself with great community support and support of KNIME. And there are also upgrade possibilities if you want to have more power using the KNIME Business Hub. Yeah, we did a workflow. We used the electronic data capture system Metrio. They are, of course, also in the market. Today, I will show 3 use cases we did. So the first one is user enter data with a non-data entry role, right? And then data entry role that not entered yet any data. And the last one is more overview for users by site and vice versa, site by users. So I switch to KNIME. Okay, so in KNIME, in the middle, you see the workflow. And you have here on the left lower corner, you have your node repository where you can take your input-output nodes. Like here we used Excel Reader. We have 2 Excel sources we did use. And then you can also use manipulation nodes that, for example, column or row filters. And then drag and drop it here and connect it to the other node. So I will make it a little bit bigger so you can see the full workflow now. And yeah, what's also great, so you can configure your nodes. So here it's pretty simple. We import an Excel file where we define where we get the data. Of course, it's also possible to get it directly from the database. What we also did is via HTTP request to get the data direct from EDC system. This is what we did also, but this is simply an example here today. So here you can do a lot of options, like defining if you have a header here in the Excel file, at which row the actual data is starting, and many more options. Yeah, and you can execute. So I already executed these workflows. So we have data here. So I open it, and you see which raw data we imported from the 2 Excel files. And then we are pre-processing the data. So this is a component, right? And this is a pretty simple component. We have a node where we just rename columns. We have a node where we filter columns, and then we have like a classical ETL workflow, and then input and output. So I will also execute this, and then you have an output. And this is what I really like, because for every node and every step you have, you can see the output, right? So this is great for transparency, to see what is actually happening with the data. And here we have the 3 workflows. So I open one of them, users enter data with non-data entry role. This is a meta node, also some kind of component. And here you see, okay, we have here more nodes, like doing some concatenating things, some sorting, row filtering, string manipulation, and so on, joining. And this is great because you can execute the workflow where you want to, and then look at the data. Right here, we don't have data. And this is great when you do something, and then you can node by node see what is happening to your data. Okay, so I executed this, and at the end it had an output. So you see there are some users with some certain roles, but they should not have rights, right? So this is the output. And here the second use case is data entry role, not entered any data. So this is mock data, of course. Oh, I need to first execute it. And you see also here the output. So you have a username which has a data entry role, which is fine, but did not enter data yet. So this is a performance thing you can look at and to see if the users are entering data in time, and then remind them to do so, please. And yeah, the third use case is users by site overview. So this is pretty simple. So you have users and to which site they are applied, and vice versa, site by users. I prepared some other example use cases. So one is data changes frequency by site and users. So also you see here I find this a nice example because here you can see, okay, you have a user and to see, okay, which changes that the user makes. So here you can see high frequency users that change data, and yeah, to follow up why this was so. If it's okay, it might be okay, sure, but might be also that too many changes are done or too few changes are done. And then also user cases last time any user made an entry change. So you see this is also a performance overview. So see, okay, when a user did the last time change. And yeah, also very important, inactive users. So you see the users that are inactive, and you can look at it and review it. And if the user is not applicable for the system, you can deactivate it, right? And here in this example, we had an Excel writer at the end. So I executed this. That means we take all the output from this here in total 6 outputs, and we put it all in a tab, right? So we have 6 tabs, and in each tab is an output. And yeah, you can of course also modify this, and at the end we also define where to store it. So you can configure it. Where do you want to store it? How do you want to name your tabs and Excel sheets, and so on. So this is one possibility. Of course, you can also export it like to a comma separated value or to PDF directly. And yeah, also export it to a database directly, right? So this is very flexible. So this is my workflow. I'm going back to the summary. So summary and benefits. Yeah, for us, a lot of use cases can be done and reviewed with a reasonable time. So it was very intuitive to use, and we pretty quickly set up the whole workflow. What would help is a standard for audit trail, because most systems have a different raw audited output. So from Meteor, it looks different than Medidata Rave or Oracle Inform. But yeah, that might be a topic for the future for CDISC, that they have a standard here. What we also find out as large data is not a problem from different studies that can be joined and reviewed in reasonable time. So anyway, we don't have that much big amounts of data in clinical trials. And automation is also possible. For example, audit trail export at defined timeframes and directly from web interface. And here I would switch back to Martina to show more of the powerful capabilities of KNIME.
Yes, thank you very much. That was very interesting. So overall, how difficult was it to create the workflow?
It was not difficult at all because it's so intuitive use. You have your nodes, right? You can use the nodes and connect it together. So that's a very short learning time, learning curve. And you have, let's say, output very quickly, which is motivating. And what I also like, and it's very helpful, that you not only have the inbuilt KNIME nodes, but also nodes from external. For example, for us, we use SAS data sets, and there's a SAS import node which can import directly SAS data sets. Yeah, this is very helpful. I mean, theoretically, we ourselves could create such a node which would do what we need in our domain. So that is very flexible.
Makes sense. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's have a look at what we have seen so far. So we saw right now how to create an audit trail review within the Nematics platform. So thank you very much for the introduction into this topic, and this covers somehow the functionality of the Nematics platform with the functionality that we just saw, like reading data, doing data transformation, and then exporting the data or maybe creating a report at the end. And this comes with the KNIME Analytics platform, which is open source, with all the extensions and integrations that are provided not only by us, but also by the community and by different partners, technology partners that we work with. Okay, so far so good. So we have a workflow that you could execute maybe on a daily basis, but for this you have to go every time into the analytics platform and execute the workflow yourself. But might be you're on vacation, right? You're not available. Therefore, it would be a nice next step to have this automated. And let me focus a little bit on this. For this, I will take Ronald's workflow and add a little bit of functionality to that workflow and show you how we can use this workflow on the KNIME Business Hub, which is our commercial product that allows you not only to automate workflow and schedule workflows, but also it's a great tool for collaboration, also to provide end users applications for users that are not trained to use the KNIME Analytics platform, for example, or provide workflows as API services. So let's move to my analytics platform. And we see here the same workflow that Ronald just introduced, right? And for this, I did some smaller changes to this workflow. So let's have a look. We saw Ronald was reading Excel files at the beginning. Ideally, you would like to skip this manual step in order to get the data automatically from the system. In my example, I just used an SQLite database, which is a very small, portable, light version of a database. You most likely have a different system. But just for the simplicity of this demo, I automated this part with a little example database. I left the middle part as is, so that the methodology from Ronald is still there. And I also exchanged the last part. So we are not writing the data into an Excel sheet. We still could, right? Even for automation, you could resend this Excel sheet automatically to your colleagues that are relevant, that are maybe mentioned in this Excel sheet. But if you want to save this and archive this for future, it's maybe a safer way to have it as a PDF, so nobody can do any changes to this. So let's have a look how the report generation looks like. I simply took all the tables that are in the output and sent them to report. Once you have this done, you can go to the bottom on the top, and then you will see a slightly different interface with all the reports, the data that are relevant for the report here on the left. And I can simply drag and drop this into this frame that I prepared here. And once I have the data in an order that I would like to have it in the report, in the PDF that we want to create, I can see how this looks like. Let's simply move this to this side, and this is how the PDF report would then look like, right? So we have on every page we have a new table. This looks pretty nice because the tables are not very wide. So taking the data that's really relevant for this report totally makes sense here. And once this is created, we can go back. Additionally, I added a date and time information of the execution of the workflow. So whenever the workflow is being executed, it extracts the date and time information, like the date information, and also sends this to the report. So we saw it. Let me pull this in again. We saw here in the report, there is the date available, right? So we in the future also know at which date this report has been created. Okay. So once we added some modifications, now we have a workflow that would automatically take data from a database, would do the review, and then create a report at the end. The next step would be now to upload this workflow to the KNIME Business Hub. So this is something I can do from within the KNIME Analytics platform directly. You see there are different teams and different spaces available. And in this case, I've just uploaded this already before the webinar today to keep it simple. But you see here's the workflow that we just created. And let's have a look how this looks like now in the KNIME Business Hub. Let's move. And here we go. This is how the KNIME Business Hub looks like. It's in principle for those of you that used KNIME before and are already KNIME users for a while, they know the KNIME Community Hub. It looks very similar. The main difference is you can have your own installation within your company of the hub. And additionally, you don't only store and search for workflows, but you can also execute those workflows on the Business Hub directly. So you don't have to leave your laptop open until your workflow finishes. And in order to start the workflow, you can simply manage this via this web browser application here on the hub. Let's go to the life sciences team, to our clinical data management space, and here to the folder. And here we have the workflow that we just created. Right, so you see how the workflow looks like. There is always a preview available. You have a lot of information about different extensions that have been used, also that about nodes that have been used, and you can create deployments. It's a longer. It's so let me explain a bit more about what this is. So going back to the top, you see here a few buttons on the top right, and one of them is run. So what we can do is you can execute the workflow directly. You can run the workflow from within the web browser. You don't have to open the KNIME Analytics platform, which is useful. You could simply share the link with a colleague that is supposed to run the workflow during your absence, for example, and then the workflow executes. Okay, so let's have a look. We need to add some configuration here. We can also notify people via email if the workflow is successful, or, for example, if it fails, if something goes wrong, for example. And you can also add several people to this. And you can also decide whether you want to get a report about this in a PDF format or any kind of other format. Okay, so let's just run this. You see the workflow executed, it finished successfully. And now we see here the content of the review that we just put into the PDF report. And we can also download the PDF report from here. And this is what we see then in the report, right? So we saw it already in the analytics platform. So we can execute the workflow right away from the web portal. What we also can do, and this would be like even the next step, is to deploy the workflow as a schedule. So we can create a schedule here. And in this case, we can tell the workflow to execute on a certain time, starting, let's say, today. We can say we want to have this workflow should execute and repeat on, like, let's say, on every day, so once a day. And then we maybe want to end the workflow execution at some point, and also set some details, additional details. If you don't want to run the workflow, for example, on weekends, only on weekdays, or maybe you want to skip December because there is not much happening in December. So there are different kind of options how to automate and schedule a workflow. And once this is done, on the bottom you can see deployments, because you deploy the workflow as a schedule, and then you see the deployments, and you can also monitor your deployments here. You see there have been some executions. So this is one that we just have done before. But also for the schedules, you would then see whether the workflows executed successfully, or if they failed, for example, for some reason. So monitoring options are available as well. Okay, so with this, let me summarize today's sessions a little bit. So there was a main key takeaway, what we learned, namely you can do audit trail reviews and clinical trials. So it's possible, and it seemed to be a reasonable time to develop those workflows. This is mainly due to the low-code solution that really enables people with different backgrounds to create different kind of analytics. It also allows, and this is very important to mention, allows the connectivity to different commonly used databases and systems within, especially within clinical trials and within the whole clinical trial domain. And overall, it's straightforward and easy to learn how to build workflows. There's a lot of material available. And the next step, like we saw before, is to develop an automated solution that executes your workflows on a daily basis and creates reports on a daily basis, for example. If you want to see more of this kind of use cases and other use cases from the KNIME community, from other KNIME fans, then I'm very excited to announce our KNIME Spring Summit in Berlin is back this year. I'm very happy about this, and we provide on the very first day, there are some trainings. And the following day, we have different presentations and workshops, a demo booth where you can see how to create workflows live from my colleagues. So just visit the webpage, our event webpage, and see what else is there. So our agenda is already available. Maybe some pointers to some maybe relevant topics, and when it comes to analyzing patient data. And there will be Raya Sutik speaking about identifying clinically relevant patient cohorts. And there's another one that focuses more on predicting home palliative care needs for cancer patients. So both are patient relevant, but there will be for sure more relevant topics, also especially in life sciences. Okay. Before we go to the Q&A section, just want to make sure that we stay in touch. So there is the hub, the KNIME community hub, where you can look for examples if you want to try some examples yourself. There is the KNIME forum where you can ask questions, and our very active KNIME community is going to answer. If you want to follow what we are doing and what kind of events are coming, please have a look at our LinkedIn or Twitter page, and also YouTube and our KNIME TV channel, where we provide also learning material and different learning videos. If you want to write to us, there are here and there contact us buttons available on our webpage and also here in the system. So just use it. And with this, I would move to the open Q&A section and welcome my colleague, Alice.
Hi, welcome everyone.
Hi, Alice.
Really nice presentation, and we do have a number of questions. Maybe the first one I would target at Ronald, and that is, do you have any examples using the Medidata Rave EDC?
Yes, we tried also Medidata Rave, which is pretty similar. So you take audit trail, export out of the system. So also via flat files like comma separated files or Excel files, or you can also directly connect with, there's a node for HTTP GET requests. So you pull out the data direct of the EDC system Rave. That is possible.
Nice, thank you. And then the second one is for Martina. I think this is going nicely into the direction of the Business Hub. The question is, could you also create a dynamic HTML instead of a bird? And I assume that with HTML, it's rather meant a little bit like an app, or like a browser-based app. You didn't show that here, but maybe you can elaborate a bit on that.
Yes, sure. Yes, that's also possible. When we looked into the Business Hub, there was the option to create schedules, but also data apps. Data apps are dynamic HTML pages, I would say, where you can add different kind of plots and visualizations and different content tables, and you can make them all interactive. So you can select something from one table, and this will dynamically update the rest of the page. So yeah, this is possible with data apps.
Nice. And also staying a little bit at how you could deploy it, there's another question. Can a workflow schedule be triggered externally via API, for example, after the data warehouse process is complete?
Yes.
And I think that's going also pretty much up our alley because we're developing something there. Martina?
Yes. Yep, that's possible.
Yes, so just for you to know, we'll have another execution type, which is a triggered one. So depending if something's changing in the data or a file is being uploaded to a certain folder or something, that will automatically trigger execution. So I think that is to come. Then we have a pretty long question. Let me read it out for it. So thanks of the person's also mentioning, thanks for the great presentation. I have 2 questions to ask. If we get data from clinicaltrials.gov, for each clinical trial, recruitment status and related references may contain the terms that explain why a certain clinical trial has been terminated or stopped. Would it be a good idea to classify these terms into several dimensions and see how these dimensions influence clinical trials? Could also KNIME be used for that to achieve this goal? I think that's for Ronald, because that's really deep in the clinical trials field.
Yes, it goes pretty deep, more a prediction of medical area. But what I can say, of course, you can take data from open data, like also from clinicaltrials.gov. I did it myself. I had a nice use case where I looked, okay, which trials from Merck we did for a certain therapeutic area, and also filter out because Merck here in Europe is different than Merck & Co. in the US. So you have to do some filtering to have the correct company here. But that is possible. You just take the data, and of course, if you're lucky, if you open data, so if you can get it, you can do a lot of things with that. Yeah, so that is a nice use case, I would say.
Yeah, it's a very nice use case. Let me comment quickly on this because I have seen this before. Use cases like automatically extracting data from the clinicaltrials.gov. They have an API, so you will get XML data or JSON depending on how you can set up the output. And then you could use once the data is in a tabular format, you could use the text processing extension to do some further content analysis. So yes, it's for sure possible. Interesting use case, by the way.
Yeah, it's a really nice idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and the second question actually goes a little bit in the direction of the data analysis itself. So it's not directly KNIME related, but when you have the sponsoring organizations, based on this information, you can summarize the clinical trials into collaborative types. And would it be a good idea to study whether the type of collaboration influences the duration of the clinical trial? So, for example, if it was financed or funded by an NGO, does that influence the duration of the clinical study? It's maybe more for the long-term knowledge of yours.
Yeah, I think that is possible, and could be also summarized nicely together, like also visualized. So yeah, that is possible. It's not my domain of expertise to go more to the finance area, but I would assess that this is not too complex to do, right?
This is the same as for the previous use case. If you try it out with KNIME and if you have some results, we are happy to share it also within a webinar with the community to see more on that area in the future.
Maybe that's opening the question to probably a lot of you guys have. Are these workflows available for the public to have a closer look and to maybe recap what you guys have been doing?
Mm-hmm. Let me take the question because I kind of expected that question already. So this workflow that Rona just presented is not available and will not be made available. But we are working on example workflows, short workflows that show you how to do simple data manipulation within clinical trials. There will be also workflow examples for clinicaltrials.gov. I have some in production, let's say it like this, and we plan to share those workflows on the KNIME Community Hub. So if you get an email from us at some point after watching this webinar, so you will also get notified about the example workflows being available.
Cool. Then we had another comment, probably to what we had been discussing before. We are having a workflow to ingest clinical data using AACT database within KNIME, so that is possible. Just relating to one of the previous questions. And maybe then another question, Ronald, you had this really nice slide where the one in purple where you showed different use cases that can be audit trailed, but you just showed this data entry one today. So are you using also KNIME workflows for any other use cases within your company that you just didn't show today?
Yeah, we tried some use cases. For example, what we also did, not in a productive stage, but exploratory, was data mapping. So we took extra raw data from a system like Rave, and then we mapped to a standard format, like what is well known here in our area in clinical trials is CDISC, SCTM. So that is also possible. That you ingest data from a source, do your transformation, and then export it to where you want to have the data. So yes, and of course there are other possible use cases. One that just that I am thinking of is you can do like quality checks on data to see like kind of edit checks and to see what output. Also ingesting raw data and do quality checks, edit checks, and do an output. Yeah. So yeah, there are many use cases that make sense and are pretty straightforward to implement.
Cool. Another question that we would have, because of course KNIME's primary intention is not to be used in clinical trials. I mean, it's pretty cool that we can be used, but is there some functionality that from within KNIME that would help you still to do to fulfill this task? Ronald?
Was it question me? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. if it's just some functionality that within KNIME that would make your life even easier to do and to fulfill the requirements of an audit trail.
Yes. So I was thinking like an easy converter to PDF, like something, and more powerful visualization tools. I know that there are some external nodes that are applicable for clinical trials. Yeah, but this is pretty special. So I think for me, more powerful PDF nodes would be great. What I did try one time was extracting from a PDF file data. So also a kind of auditory review on a PDF data. And it worked, yeah, but that was pretty complex. So if there would be a node who one can grab more easily the data from a PDF file, that would be great. And also some nodes with like better visualization.
Yeah, I think we can feel you there. It's you're also relying back often on Python to do it. So I think this is it from the Q&A section. Thanks again, folks, for this really cool presentation and for being here with us today. So I would hand back over to Martina.
Yes, also from my side, thank you very much for joining. Thank you very much, Ronald, for sharing your experience with KNIME and sharing the use case that you created. That was very interesting. And yeah, we hope to see more use cases in the future from within the clinical trials. I can almost promise there will be something more coming soon as well. So stay tuned and thank you very much. And see you in the next webinar.